Hey guys, what's going on? Chris here with Vrigade Gaming, bringing you my review for Crisis Vrigade 2, developed by Sumo Lab. Crisis Vrigade 2 was currently in early access on Index 5, Rift, and Windows Mixed Reality, but is releasing on PSVR July 14th, 2020. This review will be on the PSVR and PCVR versions. Depending on your region and platform, the game retails for an estimated price of $20. Duty calls again. Crisis Vrigade 2 takes up the baton of the first chapter and takes it to the next level. More shootouts, more weapons, more blood. The first Crisis Vrigade, to me, underwhelmed and lacked polish. The sequel looks to improve on the first in just about every single way. Will this entry give us the time crisis in VR that we crave? Stay with me as I strip it down, and let's see what it's all about. As always guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button. It not only helps out my channel, but VR gaming as a whole. And if you'd like to see more VR content from me, please consider subscribing, and for video updates, hit that bell icon. Kicking things off, let's take a look at graphics. I'll be the first to say that graphics don't make a great game. However, in VR, I'm looking for immersion, and when I have a gun in my hand and asked to feel like a SWAT officer running through something that looks like Job Simulator, that just isn't what comes to mind. That for me was the first Crisis Vrigade, whose low poly, blocky art style just did not do it for me. Shooters are a dime a dozen, so to compete you need to bring your A game. And Crisis Vrigade did just that. I don't know what happened over the past 18 months over at Sumo Lab, but Crisis Vrigade 2 goes for a realistic look this time around and ends up being maybe one of PSVR's nicest looking games in some time. Designed first for the PSVR and then scaled up for PC, Crisis Vrigade 2 on the PSVR often looks like something we would have expected from a first-party studio. And with no pro support, what you see on screen here is what everyone will see on the PSVR regardless of console. Sumo Labs has found a nice balance here on the old PS4 hardware, choosing a performance setting that has enough anti-aliasing to keep the jaggies under control, without going full firewall and creating a blur of textures. Yes, there are still some rough edges, and that's a shame for pro owners, but I can tell you that this still looks better than many pro-enhanced titles over the past few years, often looking like a poor man's Blood and Truth. And that's not an insult in the least. PCVR players thinking you may have been given the short stick here visually, I would say, well, maybe a little, as the PC version has no graphics settings, but as the game was optimized to look good on console, the game scales beautifully with a significant boost to resolution, making Crisis Vrigade 2 look almost the same in the headset as what you're seeing recorded here on the social screen. Across all versions, textures remain detailed, and along with a fairly realistic color palette, really do a nice job of immersing players in a real gunfight. Adding to this, a nice touch of breakable environments. While still limited, the sense of desperately taking cover behind wood pallets only to have them splintering around you is just great VR gaming. Another quality here I loved in Crisis 2 was the sense of scale in the world. Environments, NPCs, and weapons all felt realistically sized, and while this may sound silly, many VR titles fail in this regard, hurting immersion. Here in Crisis Vrigade 2, this is demonstrated perfectly right at the start as you take cover behind a SWAT vehicle and realize the tire not only really looks like a real-life tire, but essentially dwarfs you. Gun models are very decent, especially the two-handed variety, looking authentic but missing some animations. Animations aside, weapons are helped not only by their sharp appearance, but some excellent lighting, giving them an actual metallic appearance. In fact, lighting throughout is actually really impressive, with shaders, shadow work, and reflections at work everywhere. Much of it may be baked in, given the linear nature of this title, but even NPCs cast shadows as they run around, so whatever magic trick Sumo Lab has going on here really works. PCVR players with beefy setups may be less impressed with these, but lower spec PCs and PSVR owners, you are in for a nice surprise. Finally, NPCs across both enemies and friendlies go for a slightly cel-shaded look, which certainly lends itself to the classic arcade aesthetic. Blood is limited, but the character animations are very competent across walking, ducking, and of course dying, with some nice ragdoll physics, even post-death. All in all, Crisis Vrigade 2 is a very nice looking game that looks fantastic on the PCVR, bolstered by its superior resolution, but retains most of this visual finesse on console, standing toe-to-toe with some of PSVR's nicest looking games. Sound is up next.
What are you doing? Do you still have ammunition? It's like a green mushroom. Don't leave ammunition lying around. Don't leave ammunition lying around.
Guns. Let's start with guns, because honestly, if the gun sounds don't work, then the whole game falls apart pretty quick. The first Crisis Vrigade almost got this right, so it's with no surprise that Sumo Lab has built on this to deliver another fine gun audio showcase. As is usually the case, I wish they were punchier, but the gun samples here sound good, in fact very good, coming off authentic and never video gamey in their presentation. This authenticity carries into the shootouts themselves, with weapon fire both from you and your attacker sounding appropriate to the location of the gunfight. Street shootouts benefit from a more open soundscape, while indoor firefights sound more intimate and often more urgent as gunfire explodes around you, ricocheting and pelting at the cover around you. This is also helped greatly by a nice use of 3D positional audio that not only makes locating attackers while cowering for your life possible, but also providing the added thrill of bullets literally buzzing past your head. Voice work here, like the music, is used sparingly, with enemy attackers having little to say other than grunts and groans, and music really only popping in when you die or complete a level. The music I could care less about, but I actually wish the enemies had more to say, adding a little more life and atmosphere to the game, and making it feel a little less generic. A personal favorite, Rainbow Six Vegas, comes to mind as the perfect example.
Damn it, where'd they go?
I don't know, man.
Fuck this, man. I say we get out of here.
Shit. Bitch owed me money.
That being said, if the enemies have the same recycled dialogue as the play-by-play chatter you get from your commanding officer, I think I prefer them quiet. Fortunately, you can turn him off. And that brings us to gameplay. For those who grew up playing light gun games in the arcade and missed that simple arcade score-chasing fun, Crisis Vrigade 2 is the game for you. Simply put, Crisis 2, when compared with its predecessor, is what Terminator 2 was to Terminator 1. It takes what worked and did it again, with a little more meat on the bone and a sizable visual overhaul, offering the same fundamental experience as the first, but this time a little more prepared to play with the big boys. Just like the first Crisis Vrigade, you will duck and cover using your own physical movements, moving from scene to scene while racing against the clock to get to the end. Branching paths return, as does the game's uncompromising difficulty of putting you in harm's way with limited cover. As you have likely heard before, this series aims to be Time Crisis in VR, swapping out a duck button and making you literally take cover. The result is, you feel like a total badass, while looking like a total spaz to anyone watching you on your living room floor. Starting with only a few lives, essentially hit points, the game takes an almost realistic and hardcore approach to gunplay, making the temporary power-ups that pop up all the more valuable. Ranging from extra lives and the ability to slow down time, to two-handed rifles and dual wielding, these pickups are usually the difference between success and a quick death. While still relatively light on content, Crisis Vrigade 2 offers 3 complete stages, easily bettering the rather anemic and almost demo length of the first game's single stage. Adding a little more depth to the simple gameplay is the much appreciated ability to earn currency from your attempts, allowing you to purchase upgrades, making progression a little easier. This roguelike gameplay loop, well, of course, nice for the variety, also has the much needed option of smoothing out the game's uncompromising difficulty level. Upon completion, replay value can be found through leaderboards, the gun range, and the unlocked hell mode, basically giving you a fixed number of lives and baiting your ass down. Crisis Vrigade 2 is a title that embraces the freedom of VR, offering players the option of manual reloading clips, and insisting that they move like they would in the real world. Maybe not as foreign to PCVR players, this level of freedom and control is sure to make many PSVR gamers reach for a second set of tube socks. However, this reliance on room scale tracking can be a gift or a curse depending on what tracking setup you have. Headsets with inside-out tracking will have the easiest time here, with the limits being mostly tied to essentially the size of your play space. With my Quest connected wirelessly to my PC, I was literally rolling out of cover. However, on the other end of the spectrum, only PSVR players with an ideal camera setup will be able to get anything resembling an ideal experience, with a recommended camera placement that can track above your head and all the way to the ground, with enough play space to move around at least a 5x5 foot space. For a comparison, think super hot requirements times 2. Of course, you can push these limits, but mark my words, if you lose tracking, you're dead. However, if you can get your tracking sorted, you'll be very impressed with the level of accuracy and agility the gunplay can provide, regardless of whether you're using touch, knuckles, or move controllers. And while PSVR players may lose out a bit on the freedom of movement side of things, they do, however, receive the option of aim support, making two-handed rifles the default. And I'm sorry, PCVR players, this is a game changer and actually my preferred way to play. Starting with two-handed weapons, reloading is handled automatically, but the level of immersion and simple bump in accuracy easily bumps up the badassery a few levels. Aim tracking is, well, it's aim tracking, so having an ideal camera setup is even more necessary here. Crisis Vrigade must be played standing, and unfortunately does not currently have any options for gamers with mobility issues. There are a few ideas here being worked on at Sumo Lab, but as it stands, if you lack any range of motion, your experience will vary greatly. And finally, that brings us to fun factor and my final review. The Crisis Vrigade series is all about offering an adrenaline shot of arcade shooting action, while simultaneously embracing the freedom that virtual reality can offer to modern games. Sumo Lab absolutely nails this on its second time around, offering more levels, more options, and a visual upgrade that makes it literally unrecognizable to the first entry in the series. Unfortunately, with only 3 stages, the game does show its early access side, as the fun simply runs out too soon. In the next few months, the addition of 3-player online co-op featuring cross-play across all supported headsets is sure to help with this, as with the inclusion of alternative cover placements and the backup of friends, it is sure to be an absolute blast. That being said, I really hope we see this title fleshed out a bit, as I would love to see additional gun attachments, explosives, more levels, and more modes to help give this excellent title some legs beyond a quick shooter fix. As you guys know, I hate number rating scores and instead review games based on a scale of buy it, burn it, or wait on it, along with some details on who this game may appeal to the most. Crisis Vrigade 2 is what a sequel should be. It took what was enjoyed, doubled down on that, and then improved on the rest across the board. Shooter fans, especially those who like real-world weapons, are sure to find a lot of fun here in this arcade throwback. And I highlight arcade. This isn't a deep experience by any means, but the gameplay here is solid. PCVR gamers may not be as excited for this as they lack the aim controller and simply have more shooter options that take advantage of manual gun control and 6 degrees of freedom. But PSVR headsets, if you like shooters, this is an absolute buy, as you need this in your life. An aim controller is recommended but not mandatory. However, like I previously stated, you need to have the room, camera placement, and mobility to play this properly. Anyways guys, that's it for me. If you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more VR content from me, please consider subscribing, and for video updates, hit that bell icon. I'll catch you guys on my next video.